Hello, dear students and my viewers on YouTube. Our today's topic is a poem, A River. A river is the topic of the poem, and it's written by Ramanujan. He is an Indian poet, and this poem is the part of the post-colonial studies. It is very much representative of Indian life, natural as well as that of human beings. And Ramanujan has put much effect in making this poem as a part of the post-colonial literature. So today we shall be trying to discuss the content, the theme, and the message of this poem as a post-colonial piece of literature. So, A River by Ramanujan. First of all, let's talk something about the poet A.K. Ramanujan. He was born in Mysore, India in 1929 and unfortunately he died in 1993. So very limited space of time he lived in this world, but he did great job because he was not only a poet, he was a translator, he was a folklorist as well, and philologist too. All these credits go to him because of his good and beautiful nature. He's been taking education and studying at the University of Mysore. Then he went to Deccan College in Pune, and after that he moved to USA Indiana University for his PhD. So he's a highly qualified type of person. He has been writing in English definitely as a part of the post-colonial subject, but also in his own native language, Kannada, in India. Most of the time, when we look at his poetry, his engagement with the modernist transnationalism is present in his poems. Modern transnationalism. I mean, we are living in a world where we are not restricted. Our life is not restricted within one country. We are interacting and engaging with the world. We are interacting with the people who live in other places in other nations. So as a result, transnationalism concept is there, and this poet has been dealing with this one as well. In his poetry, some of the post-colonial issues like that of the hybridity, the change which comes in the personality of a person when somebody is engaged with the other people's culture also and is carrying the baggage of his own culture too, and as a result transculturation occurs, and this is the type of theme or issue mostly discussed by him in most of his poetry, most of his poem, and as a result he is really a post-colonial writer. Some of the famous collections of his poetry are the Satriders, published in 1966, then it is Selected Poems 1976 and Second Sight in 1986. The collected poem of A.K. Ramanujan were also published in 1995, and because of this he was able to receive an award, Sahitya Academy Award, right? And ultimately, this learned author, poet, folklorist, translator, and philologist died in 1993. The poem that is under consideration is A River. This poem is almost a representative poem of Ramanujan. Whatever the styles of poetry he is carrying, whatever things he has, whatever characteristics of his poetry, most of them are quite visible in this poem, which is titled as A River. The very first thing that one should know is that this poem is connecting most of the time the past and the present. So, two words are created in this poem also. One word is the word of the past and other is that of the present. Both are linked together in a very clever way. And because of this linking, the reader is able to find the continuity of human life, of natural life from the past towards the present. However, in this poem, some extra qualities of Ramanujan are also present. I mean, he uses wit and irony in his poetry and makes some humor as well. There is imagery, but it's not simple imagery, it's dramatic imagery as well. Because of these two techniques, I mean the use of irony and dramatic imagery, the poem gives the impression of the double layer of meaning. Rather, not only double, many layers of meaning. Besides that, some other running theme of indifference of the old and modern poet to the ravages caused by the river, nature, flood, and the pain and the suffering caused to the human, that is also present there. Definitely, if the poem is about some river, as we had the poem Wedding in the Flood, water, the benefits of water, and then the cruelties that water can commit when it is flooded, that has to be described there. So in this poem also, Ramanujan has talked about the problems of human because of the floods in the river, that has been discussed in general terminology also. Let's proceed further and look at the poem. A poem is not so small. It is just the first part. I have divided the poem for the benefit of the students and the learners into small chunks so that one can have a better view. For example, it begins like this: in Madurai, city of temples and poets, who sang of cities and temples every summer, a river dries to a trickle in the sand, bearing the sand ribs, straw, and women's hair, clogging the water gates at the rusty bars, under the bridge with patches of repair all over them. The wet stone glistening like sleepy crocodiles, the dry ones shaven water buffaloes lounging in the sun. The poets only sang of the flood. This is the one part of the poem where the river has been constructed. The image of the river, we should say, has been constructed not full of water, but rather a dry river. One can imagine very clearly when a river dries, many things become visible at the basement of the river, at the banks of the river, at the bridges of the river, which normally one does not see because mostly water is covering these things. But when the water dries up, many things at the basement of the river can be seen. And that is why the poet has also given us a clue that he is going to talk about a river which runs beside the city of Madurai, and he praises the city by saying it's not a common city, it is the city of the temples and that of the poets. So, in this way, he makes the city beautiful first of all, and after that, he says, not only beautiful, he also refers it to the religiosity and history of the city, importance of the city, and besides that, the river dries to a trickle. I mean, the river has become so dry that there is no water at all. It is the sand which becomes bare. One can see the sand ribs of the river, and one can also see the hair of the women, for example, which are entangled here and there, and possibly somebody might have thrown them into the river water. And now, because of the dryness of the river, these things can be seen. Not only one can see these things, but also one can see the gates of the bridges or the dams which are constructed in order to stop water, control water. These bridges, gates can also be seen. Some of the rusty bars of these bridges can be seen, and then some type of repairing are going on, and a few of the stones are quite visible. There are two types of stones have been talked about. One is the wet stone, which is still carrying some type of water on it, and other are the dry stones. The poet compares the wet stone with the glistening like sleepy crocodile. I mean, the color of the stones has become greenish or yellowish greenish, and as a result, he says that it resembles as if some crocodiles are there. And the other dry stones look like the buffaloes which have been lounging in the sun. The dry stones, they have become blackened. And the poet, in the ending line of this part, says that the poets mostly have been looking at the water of the river. No one looked deeper into the river when the water was dry. So the praises of the poets have been coming of the flood of the river, water of the river, and nobody sang about the song of the dry timing of the river. It is just the same. As for example, we have seen that number of poets in English poetry talk about the spring season. Everybody praises the spring season. But Keats was an unusual, different type of poet, that he praised the autumn season. I mean, he discovered beauty in the season of autumn. Same is the case with Ramanujan, that he is not only talking about the things which happen when the river is full of water, but also he is talking about the things when the river is having no water. So he is admiring the river at that time, explaining the condition of the river at that time, when actually it is not river, it's a river of sand, because the change has come and water is no more there. So in this way, a hidden complaint of the availability of water and absence of water is also presented here. And the complaint is also that many people talked about the flood of the river, but they never talked about the basement of the river, dryness of the river, and what things can be seen inside the dry basement of the river also. Let's go to the part 2 of the poem. These parts are not made by the poet. These are the my own choice and selection in order to make the student understand. So, River 2, Part 2, River 2, Part 2. He was there for a day when they had the floods. People everywhere talked of the inches rising, of the precise number of cobbled steps run over by water rising on the bathing places, and the way it carried off three village houses, one pregnant woman, and a couple of cows named Gopi and Brinda as usual. Now, this part of the poem takes us to the second word or second image of the river where water is present. In the first part, water was absent. In the second part, water is present. The poet says that many poets have talked about this condition of river when water was plentifully available. And it was a floody situation when water was every day rising by inches, and the gauges could tell that water level is rising and flood is therefore coming. And as a result of the rising level of the water, many places which never got water, they were getting water. So in this way, water was increasing in bulk, in size, in quantity as well. In such a situation, floods happen, and he gives us the picture of the flood. Number one, it carried three village houses. I mean, the force of the water of flood of river carried or destroyed three houses. Then one pregnant woman was also drowned into that, and two cows whose name have also been given, Gopi and Brenda, they also died in it, they also drowned in it. In the red lines, if you see, destruction of the river has been talked about by naming three village houses, then the pregnant woman, and then the two cows. So three things have been talked about: cows, woman, and village houses. The strange and ironic thing is that here the cows have the name like Gopi and Prinda, but the woman does not have a name. So in this way, the impression is being given that woman was unknown. Nobody knew who that woman was. But she was pregnant, it means that she was having life in her belly. As a result, she didn't die or drown alone. It was the life in her belly as well. And nobody could save her. Same as the case with the cows also. And these cows were known possibly. They belong to someone. And so the names are there, Gopi and Brinda. Now these two names also reflect the Indianness of the life of the Indian people. So this life of the Indian people, which was a former colony of the British people, that is being portrayed, that is being represented. So the poem becomes post-colonial poem as well. This is the part 3 now, all read because it's all important. The new poets still quoted the old poets, but no one spoke in verse of the pregnant woman. Poet again comes back to the complaint by saying that everyone talked in the tone of the old poets who have been talking about the surface water, who have been talking about the flood of the river, who have been talking about the world which was visible on the surface level of the water. But nobody talked about beneath the surface level of the water. What is going on there? Who was drowned there? Who was lying there? Whose dead body could be there? For example, he says, no one ever talked about the condition of the woman who was pregnant and who was drowned. She had two twins in her belly, and these were kicking her before their birth, and they were making her painful as well. But no poet is going to talk about that. So, in this way, the difference between the old poets and the new poets, like Ramanujan says, that he is the one, or the people like him are the ones who would like to go deep under the surface also, not only simply of the river, but also that of the matter also, to find out what was going in beneath, to realize the pain of those people who are really in pain, to realize the disappointment, the helplessness, and the problematic situation in which women are present, men are present, human beings are present. This thing, he says, nobody realizes. Only the things which are visible, we try to talk about them, but we never try to discover the basis of the rivers that everyone is carrying in oneself. For example, everyone knows that the pregnant woman died, but how many people know that what was in her belly and what that life was doing at that time, and how was she struggling in order to save that life, and how that life was trying to struggle itself? Nobody tries to talk about that. This is the complaint of the poet in the part 3 of the poem, which is called A River. Now, this is part 4, and it's going to be the last part. He said the river has water enough to be poetic, about only once a year, and then it carries away in the first half hour. Let me talk about this first of all. The red lines, for example, are saying that many people say, why to go beneath and why to go talk of the basis of the river? Why not to talk about the things which are happening on the surface level? Because the water of the river is important. It is life on the one hand, but when it is in big quantity, huge bulk size, flooded water of the river is there, at time it's a problem as well. So many things happen because of the flooding of the river. So the poets say that they have sufficient material to talk about. Why to talk about those things which are not visible? So destruction, according to them, destruction brought by the water of the river was more important, and as a result, they would talk about this type of the situation of the river. So once a year, the water would come only for first half hour. It would bring destruction. Again, the same repetition in the end of the poem, by saying that 3 village houses were carried away. Couple of cows, Gopi and Binda, definitely in the beginning of the poem and once again here. And then the pregnant woman as well, expecting identical twins with no moles on their bodies. She was thinking that she has got the identity of the mole on her body, and perhaps her twins may not be having. That was also drowned. Once again, it was done by the river. With different colored diapers, she was thinking that she will be making them wear like that to tell them apart so that her twins may be different from each other. Now, that was the expectation. That was the hope in the mind of the woman when she drowned, and along with her, her hopes also drowned, her expectations also drowned, her babies in the belly, they were also drowned, though she had the plans about them, like what type of diaper she will be giving, what type of identification marks she will be taking. All these things were in her mind, but the flood of the river every year came and caused these things. So the poet says that the river can cause destruction. And most of the time we look at the destruction. We do not go deep into the basement of the river to find out what the word is residing there, what the things are there, whose memories are there, whose expectations are buried, who is the one who was thinking, and the happiness of that person is also buried there. So that is the two types of word the poet has tried to construct, and in that way the complaint of the poet has also been lodged in the poem. Now, some of the critical materials here, critical appreciations of the poem. For example, the first point is that the tone of the poem is sarcastic and ironic. Definitely, double meaning are there, surface meaning are different from the deeper meaning, and as a result, irony is present. The poem has been divided automatically into 4 types of paragraphs. There is no stanza formation. It's a type of paragraph formation. Sometime one paragraph can be of just single line, or the 2 lines also, or the 6 or 10 lines also. So in that way, the poem has a very different type of structure, not that of the stanza formation or that of the rhyming or sonnet type of situation. It has a different paragraph type of situation. So it's going to be a modern type of poetry where any style of writing can be adopted by a person. For example, 4 paragraphs are mainly present in the poem. Very short one are also present and very long one also. Only 2 lines of the poem are isolated in the shape of the paragraph. Effect of irony increases because of this type of structure of the poem, that one can say more things by creating borders and boundaries between the things in order to make them highlighted to increase the effect of irony. But on the other hand, if you have a view of the poem, language is very simple. There is no single difficult word which makes the reader upset. What does this word mean? So easy language, simple language has been used so that the surface level meaning and deeper level meaning both can be understood by the readers. The thought sequence which began in the beginning runs to the end of the poem very smoothly and very clearly. There is no problem in the poem because of which something may be stopped. What the thing poet started, he increased the level of that thing, changed the second part of the poem and the world it was creating, the image was heightened, and ultimately the poet brings back once again the same image wherefrom he had started his poet or the poem. The river is creative force. In the river, two types of things are happening. Number one thing is that river is life, water is life, definitely we have that. And then the creativity of the life because of the water of the river has been ironically and juxtaposingly talked to us in term that a woman who was carrying the life, she died and she drowned, but still the river is going to be the life giver. But the death of one is going to be the life of the other. River also undergoes this situation. It is life giver when the water is there, and at the same time, the flood of the river is life taker as well. But on the whole, generally, the water of the river is a creative force, as the symbol of woman, pregnant women, has been used because a pregnant woman also means creative force, that she is going to create something. So, river is creative as well, it's a creative force also, but then it's a destructive force as well. So, human life goes on like that, as the paradox of pregnant women has been there. That the pregnant woman is life, and then river destroys that life and everything is finished. So, river is the one which gives life also and it destroys also. So, in that way, the human life condition, that on the one hand we are going well, we have very beautiful life, but the same life can cause our destruction as well. It can have the adverse effect on us as well. So, some are the points which can be included in the poem. There are very little other techniques used, for example, metaphors. Only river can be taken as a metaphor, or the pregnant woman can be taken as a metaphor. There's nothing else complicated in the poem. But then we have similes. The words which I, for example, reddened, they carry the similes as well. The word like or as has been used. For example, in the very first part, the wet stone glistening like sleepy crocodile. So that's a comparison, that's a type of simile. This has been used by the poet. But if you look at the lines of the poem, it's very, very difficult to find out any type of rhyming. For example, look at the first four lines, Madurai, poets, temples, summer. There is no rhyming scheme at all. Length of the lines of the poem is also uneven. It's not the same one. For example, even here, the first line has 5 words, but then if you look at the first red line, it has got many words in it, almost double the number of words which are present in the first line of the poem. Yes, some of the names have been used, and these names are used in order to make it more and more localized. So, in that way, local culture is being portrayed in English language in order to give the world audience, and that is why the poem becomes post-colonial as well. The observation of the poet is very much great, because even in this part, if you look at, the measuring rod of the water has been told to us in a very beautiful way, that the water is rising by inches, and this rise can be seen on the gauge mapping of the river, and ultimately how does it cause destruction, that has been talked about by the poet also. In the part 3, all part is a river poem 3. Here I have made it reddened, because once again the poet goes to discuss about the condition of the pregnant woman. I mean, life is inside her, she is going to give birth, but as soon as she exposes herself to the river, that life, that expectation is also killed with her. So, in that way, the part 4 is also like that, similar repetition is then. But the image of the flood image of the dryness of the river represent two words. One word when it is beneficial but destructive as well. The second when it is not beneficial but it exposes what type of destruction it has been going through as well. So in that way, this is the whole poem. So students and viewers, thank you very much. If you have learned anything, if you have seen or understood anything in this poem, screen video typed by me, please go ahead and subscribe the button also and give your comments definitely in order to make my videos even further. Okay, thank you very much for watching. That's it for this day.